The lantern flickered against the rough cabin walls, its flame dancing shadows across the timber. The rancher's boots pressed heavy into the dust-worn floorboards as he stepped closer to the bed. A torn cloth lay draped over the trembling form of a young woman. Her breath was shallow, her frame shivering though the fire still smoldered in the hearth. He reached down, weathered hands pausing in mid-air. For a heartbeat, the cabin was silent, but for the ticking of the clock and the sigh of wind pushing through the cracks. Then her voice, faint as the dying flame, broke the stillness. "Let my shadows fade," she whispered. The rancher swallowed hard, then lifted the cloth. His eyes froze. Beneath it lay a face battered and bruised, lips split, one eye swollen shut. Purple marks wrapped her arms like chains, each one telling a story of nights filled with rage and fists. Blood crusted at her temple, and her hair clung damp against her skin. For a moment he forgot to breathe. "Lord above," he muttered, the words catching in his throat. Her gaze met his, haunted, hollow, but alive. She flinched as though expecting another strike. "No more hurt," she begged, voice cracking. "Please, don't let him find me." The rancher's jaw clenched, lines deepening around his mouth. "You're safe here," he said firmly, though his voice trembled with the weight of what he saw. "Ain't no man crossing this door to harm you again." Her eyes closed, a tear slipping free. In that instant, he saw more than wounds. He saw betrayal woven into every bruise, cruelty carved into her very skin. Somewhere in the dark corners of her past, a hand meant to protect had instead beaten her down. Outside, the wind carried the howl of coyotes, echoing her torment. The rancher pulled the blanket tighter around her shoulders, staring into the fire as if it could burn away the image seared into his mind. The narrator's voice lingered, steady and grave. In the Wild West, shadows often covered the worst of sins. But when a man dared to lift the cloth, he faced the truth of what cruelty left behind. The rancher knew one thing as he kept watch through the night. Her battle was now his. The desert sun showed no mercy. Its fire pressed down from above, baking the earth until the soil cracked open like old leather. Out there, in the emptiness where even the wind refused to linger, she had been left to die. Her wrists were bound with coarse rope, the fibers cutting deep into her skin. Each breath scraped her throat dry, each gasp thinner than the last. The stepfather's laugh still echoed in her ears, a sound crueler than the desert itself. "No law out here, girl," he had snarled, tossing her into the dust. His boots ground against her ribs as he spat into the sand. "Just dirt and bones. And you'll be both before sundown," she had pleaded, broken voice reaching for mercy. "Please, water. Just one drink." But he only tipped the flask to his own mouth, liquor spilling down his chin, and rode away with dust rising behind him. Hours stretched like days. The sun beat down until her lips split and bled. Vultures circled overhead, black shadows wheeling slow, patient arcs in the sky. She tried to cry out, but only a rasp came. Her tongue felt like stone. When she fell sideways into the sand, her cheek burned against the earth. The world blurred, heat shimmered, sky and soil twisting together. Her mind swam between memories of slammed doors, broken bottles, and the sting of fists. Every shadow of him lingered. "Let it end," she murmured, voice barely a breath. "Let me fade." But fate had other plans. Boots thudded in the distance, steady, heavy, unlike the drunken stagger of the man who had left her. A figure broke through the mirage, coat flapping against the dry wind, hat brim pulled low. The rancher reined his horse hard when he saw her sprawled in the sand. His chest tightened. Her skin was blistered, eyes half closed, vultures already daring to descend. "God Almighty," he breathed, dropping to his knees. With calloused hands, he brushed grit from her face. Her eyes flickered open for a heartbeat. A whisper passed her cracked lips. "Don't let him find me." The rancher pulled his canteen free, tilting the water against her mouth, his voice a vow beneath the endless sun. "Not while I'm still standing." The rancher's horse carried them slow but steady across the prairie, hooves drumming against the hard-packed earth. The young woman sagged in his arms, barely conscious, her head resting against his chest. Each sway of the saddle seemed to pull her further from life, yet she clung to the faint rhythm of his heartbeat, steady, unbroken, unlike the chaos she had known. By the time the cabin came into view, the sky had dimmed to copper. Smoke curled from the chimney, and the rancher whispered a quiet prayer as he swung down from the saddle, cradling her fragile frame as though she were made of glass. Inside, the cabin smelled of wood smoke and coffee grounds. He laid her on the bed, the rough wool blanket swallowing her small body. Lantern light painted the room in gold and shadow, flickering over the scarred table and the rifle leaning by the door. He fetched water from the basin, soaking a strip of cloth torn from his own shirt. Gently he cleaned the dust and blood from her skin. Each wince from her lips cut deeper into him than any knife ever could. "Easy now," he murmured, voice low. "You're safe here. Ain't nobody touching you again." Her eyes fluttered open for a moment. Fear lingered there, sharp as broken glass. He'll come," she whispered. "He always does." The rancher shook his head, jaw tight as stone. "Not to this door. Not while I'm breathing." She closed her eyes again, a single tear streaking through the grime on her cheek. The night deepened. Outside, coyotes yipped against the wind, their cries like mockery of the suffering she'd endured. But inside, the fire crackled warm, and the walls held fast against the cold. The rancher sat beside her, boots planted heavy on the floorboards, rifle within reach. He poured whiskey into a chipped tin cup and dabbed her wounds, the liquor biting into open skin. She winced, but he steadied her hand with his own. "Stay with me," he said softly. "Don't you drift away now." The narrator's voice settled over the moment like a hymn. In a land where cruelty often claimed the weak, sometimes salvation came in the form of one man, one fire, and four walls sturdy enough to hold back the dark. And that night, the rancher kept watch until dawn. The wind shifted that night, carrying with it a silence heavier than any storm. The rancher sat in his chair by the fire, rifle resting across his knees, eyes half closed, but never asleep. The young woman lay under the wool blanket, her breathing shallow but steadier than before. For the first time in years, she slept without a boot crashing against the door. Then, boots, a faint crunch outside, careful, deliberate. Not the sound of a wanderer passing through, but of a predator circling. The rancher's eyes snapped open. He eased the lantern wick lower, letting shadows swallow the cabin walls. His finger brushed the rifle's trigger guard. Through the thin pane of glass, a shadow shifted. A face pressed against the window. The stepfather. His eyes were bloodshot, his breath fogging the glass. A sneer pulled at his mouth as he muttered through the dark. "You think you can hide from me, girl? You'll always be mine." The rancher rose slowly, boots grinding against the boards. He leveled the rifle, sight fixed on the figure outside. The young woman stirred in her sleep, mumbling a single word. "No." Her body trembled as though even her dreams weren't safe from him. The outlaw stepped back into the night, stumbling slightly, liquor sloshing from the flask in his hand. He wasn't here to fight, not yet. He was here to remind her, remind them both, that he still prowled the shadows. The rancher pushed the door open, rifle aimed into the black. But by then the man was gone, only the sound of a horse snorting in the distance, followed by the fading jangle of spurs. He stood on the porch, lantern light casting long beams across the dirt yard. Coyotes yipped again on the ridges, but even they seemed distant compared to the weight of that moment. When he stepped back inside, the woman's eyes were open, wide with fear. "He'll come back," she whispered, voice breaking. "He always does." The rancher set the rifle against the wall, his expression hard as stone. "Then I'll be waiting, and next time he won't walk away." The narrator's voice lingered, low and solemn. "Some shadows don't flee the light. They bide their time, waiting to strike again. And in the Wild West, a promise of return was never just words. It was a threat, carved deep into the night. The dawn broke in shades of pale gold, spilling across the prairie like paint on a canvas. But the rancher felt no peace in it. His jaw was set as he saddled his horse, leaving the woman resting in the cabin, the fire low but steady. He knew shadows didn't vanish with daylight. They lingered, and last night proved it. The ride into town was long and silent, hooves pounding a rhythm across the dirt road. Every mile carried with it a memory of her broken face, her whispered fear. He'll come back. The rancher knew she was right. The town stirred slowly that morning. Merchants swept dust from their storefronts, and children chased each other near the trough. Yet the air felt brittle, like everyone knew danger was brewing. The rancher swung down from his horse and pushed through the sheriff's door. Inside, the sheriff sat behind a desk worn smooth by years of broken promises and faded wanted posters. His eyes lifted, heavy with the weariness of a man who had seen too many graves dug under the frontier sun. The rancher spoke first, his voice like gravel. "He's back. The drunk bastard's sniffing around my ranch, and he's looking for her." The sheriff leaned back, sighing, fingers drumming against the wood. "You know as well as I do, out here the law rides slow. I can't haul a man in for standing outside your window." The rancher's fists clenched at his sides. "He ain't just standing, Sheriff. He's threatening, and next time, it won't stop at the window." The sheriff studied him, silence stretching thin between them. Finally he nodded, voice low. "If he shows his face again, if he lays a hand on her, I'll bring men." "We'll put him in chains." The rancher leaned forward, eyes burning. "Chains won't hold him long, but steel and lead might." The sheriff's gaze hardened. "Then you'd best be ready." Back at the ranch, the woman stirred by the fire. She told her story in broken fragments, how her stepfather had gambled away their land, drowned his failures in whiskey, and turned his rage on her when the bottle emptied. Her voice trembled, but her will showed through the cracks. The narrator's voice carried above the fire's crackle. In a land where justice crawled slower than evil's stride, sometimes a sheriff's word was the only shield between a soul and the grave. But words alone were fragile things, and the night was already sharpening its knives. Night fell heavy, the kind of black that swallowed the horizon whole. The rancher kept the lantern low, his rifle resting across his knees as he sat by the fire. The young woman dozed fitfully on the bed, clutching the blanket like a lifeline. Outside, the coyotes had gone quiet. The silence wasn't peace, it was warning. Then came the sound, hooves in the distance. More than one. A thunder of horses rolling closer. The rancher rose to his feet, lantern light catching the steel in his eyes. He stepped to the window, and his heart clenched. Torches. A gang of men rode hard through the night, flames flickering against their faces, shadows stretching long across the yard. At their center, swaying in his saddle, rode the stepfather, liquor spilling from his flask, laughter spilling from his rotten teeth. "Bring her out!" he bellowed, voice slurred yet venomous. "She's mine!" "Always was, always will be." The young woman jolted awake, terror flashing across her bruised face. "He's here," she whispered, her body trembling. The rancher chambered around with a hard click. "Stay down," he ordered, voice low but steady. The first torch sailed through the air, smashing against the fence. Flames licked up the dry wood, sending sparks into the wind. Shouts followed, wild, drunken voices filled with hatred. The rancher threw the door open, rifle raised. "You take one more step," he growled into the night, "and you'll find out how quick dirt can swallow a man." Gunfire cracked back in answer, bullets splintering the porch rail. The woman screamed, ducking low as glass shattered. Horses reared, the gang whooping and hollering as chaos tore the night wide open. The rancher fired, the shot echoing like thunder. One rider tumbled from his horse, torch rolling into the dust. Still, they pressed closer, shadows dancing wild in the firelight. The stepfather sneered, pointing toward the cabin. "Burn it down. Drag her out!" The woman clutched the blanket tighter, whispering, "No more shadows. Please, no more." The narrator's voice cut through the roar of fire and gunfire. Evil does not whisper in the Wild West. It screams. It comes with torches and iron, demanding blood. And that night, the rancher stood alone against a tide of darkness, knowing dawn might never come.